Ravi, who all are the students?
Namaste and greetings.
Okay, go ahead.
Namaste and greetings. I, Avi Sharma, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today, we are gathered here for day 12 of UPLGYF Urban Policy and Local Governance Youth Fellowship, an online national autumn and winter school program, a 4-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program organized by IMPRI Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies, CHURS, IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi. The chair for the program is Professor Manjula Bharathy ji, Professor, Center for Urban Policy and Governance, School of Habitat Studies, and Professor, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Visiting Professor, IMPRI. The conveners for this course are Dr. Soumyadeep Chattopadhyay ji, Mr. Tikender Singh Panwar ji, Mr. Sameer Unhale ji, Mr. Arvind Unni ji, Dr. Simi Mehta ji, and Dr. Arjun Kumar ji. We have also shared the course outline and reading resources document in your email for your kind attention. We will be providing videos of each session for flexible learning at your place and convenient time. Before we start today's session, I would like to announce the housekeeping rules. It is encouraged that you join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise. Refrain from making general comments in the questions to save time. Without any further delay, to begin today's session, I would like to hand over to our chair, Professor Manjula Bharathy ji, for her remarks about this extensive course.
Good evening, all of you. And good evening, Tikender Singh. I'm seeing you after such a long time. Nice to see you. So we are coming to the, I think, Priyanka, are we coming to the end of the session, right? This is the last session, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So after having a series of section on urban local governance, this is a very important session that actually speaks about the way in which whatever the infrastructure, whatever the finance, because we discussed about, Dr. Thomas Isaac was speaking about the importance of local governance and the reimagining of the local governance and what is the context, and he was saying about it. Mr. Vijayanand was speaking about, importance of looking at the marginals, and Mr. Dr. Harilal was speaking about looking at it from a financial point of view, and Professor Bide was looking at the housing perspective, and I was looking at the gender perspective. And so it is so many important scholars came here and discussed about the importance of urban local governance and the ways in which it's going to shape our understanding. Because like we continuously saying, the local governance is important because it is coming from the principle of decentralized governance, which is working on the principle of subsidiarity, where what is the level at which, the lowest level at which we can work so that it can bring participation into the people, and then it can bring an inclusive governance, and it can also speaks about the ways in which we envisage a decentralized democratic governance, which is very, very important, where how can we have a dialogue with different stakeholders at our local governance. So it is very important. But I would request Tikender Singh ji to discuss about the politics. When we are discussing about the other ideological premises, we also need to understand the politics, where the municipalities and corporations and the politics involved in it, and how that is being taken into practice. Like I continuously speak about Amartya Sen, when he speaks about there is an ideology of inclusive governance, participative governance that we envisage when we are thinking about local governance, but then institutions of urban local governance to implement that. But then what is the practices coming out of it? So what is the rupture between the politics and the practice? And how then we are going to address and negotiate it with these ruptures is something that is very important. So I am very keen to listen to Tikender Singh ji, who actually been involved and engaged with this political thing, and all to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for summarizing the ideas we discussed within the course so comprehensively. Now, I would like to hand over to our speaker for the day, Mr. Tikender Singh Panwar, Senior Fellow IMPRI, former Deputy Mayor Shimla, for his session on urban local governance, politics, and practice. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Over to you.
That for this opportunity to speak to you. Professor Manjula, just a question to you. When you said Dr. Harilal, is it the 7th Finance Commission chairperson in Kerala? Is the same Harilal you are talking about? Professor Manjula? When you mentioned name of Dr. Professor...
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Okay.
I'm sorry, sir,
Not
but
able to hear you, sir. Like I think you're muted.
Yeah. Now, I was keen to know whether you're talking about the same Dr. Harilal, who is the 7th Finance Commission chairperson in Kerala.
Yeah. And Vijayanand, again, he was the former finance chairperson, and right now Harilal has taken over. Yeah, he's the same person.
Okay, great. So I'm so happy to be here because this is the first direct interaction that I'm having after submitting the the Kerala Urban Policy report to the Chief Minister yesterday, and it's an interim draft, which in fact is a new experiment that has happened in the country. No state has been able to undertake such an exercise. I can tell our participants here that it's only the first state in the country to have gone ahead in the formation of an urban policy for 25 years, and which has a very strong pillar on collective local governance. I cannot reveal all the formulations that we made because it's still a draft. But as I said, it's my first interaction. So I'm really glad and elated to talk to our participants, fellow participants, the processes in which we are arriving at some of the precipitating problems of urbanization and local governance. And why I mentioned Dr. Harilal, because just day before yesterday, we also had an interaction with Dr. Harilal before presenting this report to the Chief Minister. Now we'll wait for the government for a month or so and then take their feedback. And then final policy, I think we would be making it public by say March or April. But the interim draft has already been submitted to the Kerala government. So that's the first information that I thought I must tell. I must also explain that this process took almost a year. It's full 1 year that we have consumed, in which there were 30 members in the commission, and that's how we have actually come to this to this draft policy. I'm quite excited because lots of processes, and in the preparation of this policy, in fact, I was able to meet all the municipal council presidents, all the mayors, all the chairpersons of the standing committees and different other sections. So I can tell you, I met nearly 1,000, between somewhere around 800 to 1,000 elected urban representatives in Kerala, and that's how it's quite a bottom-up exercise. And now let's see how Kerala assimilates it and how Kerala tries to negotiate with this whole process. Now, having said that, as I said, I will also try to explain some of the processes because I can't reveal the recommendations. But of course, some of the challenges that are faced both in India and in Kerala. So there are 3 or 4 very general statements that I want to make right at the inception. The first one is that let us accept that India is at the brink of an urban revolution. This is a massive demographic shift that's going to happen in the country, and where we'll have the largest number of people on earth living in cities, and that's going to be India. Soon we are going to surpass China. So what does it mean? It means that there will be high densification. More and more people would be migrating to cities. And then also there will be challenges pertaining to once this migration takes place, and at the same time, what kind of governance methods, tools, mechanisms do we foresee? And will the current form of urban governance, will that suffice? And if this will not suffice, then what are the alternative ways in which we must try to negotiate our pathways? That's the second thing. The third thing is, which I think I have been talking about it since quite a long time, and that is about, this whole differentiation that we have, the kind of urbanization that we have been witnessing in a classic way, I would say, in the global north, in the Western countries, and the kind of urbanization we witness in India. Now, what are the stark differences? Let's try to understand them. And then I will also try to overlay, some of the principles of urban governance. I mean, why we require some different sets of urban governance models in India. The first thing is that in the global north, urbanization was preceded by industrialization. So it's basically the industrial revolution that brought in millions and millions of people from the countryside to the cities. And that's how the surplus that was generated and the surplus labor that moved to the cities was absorbed, because it was the production process. The major production process was industrialization. And not just people and labor from their own native countries, but also the imported labor from across the world. We have slave trade, then we have an estimated some 20 million from China and India who migrated to the global north to sustain their industrialization process. And that's how the urbanization was actually charted on a path. But how could they sustain that if we think that they were able to sustain their urbanization processes by just creating the surplus in their native countries and then, further democratizing it, or suburbs, further unleashing the whole development wheel, as they say? It's not that simple, but also because of the global empire and the colonialism, what we call imperialism, the colonial loot across the world. And it is estimated, and this is a figure I've been quoting time and again. Some of you are very familiar with this figure. What Uttar Patnaik has been claiming, that $45 trillion is the total wealth that was taken from India to Britain, just because, and then we had colonies like Portuguese, the French colonies, etc. So their urbanization was A, it was preceded by industrialization. B, it was sustained by the surplus that was getting generated in their native countries, but also the phenomenal colonial empire and the usurping of this phenomenal wealth that they could extract from their colonies. And that's how the urbanization wheel was spinning in the West. Now, post-independence, we tried to embark on the same path, and we thought that this is the way how we are going to go ahead. And we thought that and we did industrialize for a pretty short time, maybe a decade or two. But then 60s and 70s, we find things started changing in the global north, and we also started facing the brunt. 70s, 80s, we realized that it's no more manufacturing or industrial-driven urbanization that is taking place. And slowly, we found that manufacturing sector or the primary production sector was giving way for primarily, for the tertiary sector, and services started dominating. This happened in the globe at the global level. And the second basic element, which would be a little difficult for our young participants to understand, what we have been explaining, that this transformation that started taking place from use value to exchange value, something that was of use for the society, for example, utilities, water, sanitation, education, health, these categories which were considered to be of use value started commoditizing, and this huge surplus that started getting generated. And we also tried to follow the same trajectory post-90s in India. So having said that, what is the governance model? Why did we not realize in when we were forming the constitution in the 1950s that we should, in fact, go for a third tier of governance structure? And why is it only late in the 90s that we decided that the 74th constitutional amendments are brought? Though Rajiv Gandhi thought in between, I think this, correct me if I'm wrong, 65th or the 66th constitution, but that did not succeed. That also comes out from, the National Commission on Urbanization, which was headed by Charles Correa, and it had a profound impact. But unfortunately, we know Rajiv Gandhi was killed, and then there was no ownership of the National Commission on Urbanization, which had actually recommended phenomenal reforms in the governance structure. Somehow, after the 74th Constitutional Amendment in 92-93, we started working on some element of democratic decentralization, but I'll come to it once I talk about that. But why is it, the question remains, why is it that when we were framing the Indian Constitution, we did not think in those lines? I think there are many reasons to that, but two of the important leaders, both Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. Ambedkar, both of them had different views on that, and Dr. Ambedkar, as we know, was very categorically against, creating those islands in the cities where your caste differentiation continues to remain and continues to exploit. So he was not very fancy of the idea of this decentralization process and of city, and whereas Mahatma Gandhi was more focused on Gram Swaraj than on city governance structures. So the contradiction, if you ask me, on the one hand, we tried to copy the West in the mode of production sector, but what we call the superstructure, the different elements of governance, which should have been, democratic processes of governance, somehow we did not enter into that phase, except for some interventions by the left governments, be it in Kerala or be it in West Bengal, where we have this regular elections to the, and there is also a story to it. This is a dialogue that took place between Ashok Mitra and Jyoti Basu in West Bengal. Well, I'll keep that apart right now, but I think these are the processes in which we entered this phase of the mid-90s, but also to remember that the 90s is a period when we also embarked on a different trajectory. Now, if just to remind our participants that when Charles Correa was heading the National Commission on Urbanization, if you see some of the provisions and some of the formulations that this National Commission is looking at, you will come to know that the fundamental principle they thought would be industrialization. So they thought industries, then layers of labor shifting, then labor. How do you assimilate the whole question of industrial worker participation of the industrial worker, etc., etc. But today, the story is not the same. You barely have large industries in the cities. The industries have already shifted. And this fragmentation of the industrial production system has further led to another form of production system that we find all across the globe. So, but 74th Constitutional Amendment, and I'm sure our participants have been explained that some of the fundamental departures, as Professor Manjula was pointing out, first we find in the 74th Constitutional Amendment, they said that at least ensure elections after five years, at least ensure that the cities cannot run the way they are being made to run. There's a complete mismatch between the production process and the city governance structures. So you ought to have at least 18 subjects under the 12th schedule that should be transferred to the cities. And likewise, the 3 Fs that we have been saying, functions, functionaries, and the finances must be transferred to the city. So this whole emphasis on the third tier, there is a constitutional amendment, and that's how that started, that how the devolution process is to take place. So under the Central Finance Commission, earlier the devolution only went to the center and the state, of course, and then it was emphasized, and since it was a constitutional mandate, that the devolution will also take place on a certain criteria also to the local bodies, that's the cities and the gram panchayats all across the country. And I don't think that I'm here to measure the success and the failure of the 73rd and particularly the 74th Constitutional Amendment. But the point is, how long have we trudged this path, and how long have we succeeded in it is a big question mark that we need to ask ourselves. Nevertheless, what is important to me, I think, when we are talking about 74th Constitutional Amendment, because I also got an opportunity to review the 74th Constitutional Amendment with K.C. Sivaramakrishnan, who was the chair, who was the person who in fact scripted the 74th Constitutional Amendment, and in a kind of midterm review, and we found that not more than 3 or 4 subjects have been universally transferred to the cities. Now the point is, the production process was changing. At the same time, we do not find a change in the governance structure. Why? I think that's a question that needs to be asked. To me, there could be many reasons, but to me, I think one of the principal reasons is that nobody wants to lose the control of the cities. Why? Nobody wants to, when I say nobody, means the federal and the provincial. That means the center and the state. Both spaces do not want to lose the cities for the simple reason that we have an estimate that nearly 66 to 70% of the GDP comes from the cities. Almost 90% of the finance comes from the cities. And therefore, losing control and democratizing it means that you have strong cities, but you may not have those strong provincial governments. So there exists a dichotomy. How could that dichotomy have been addressed? And for that matter, even the center, for example, you can easily understand in a state like Delhi, where Delhi state, I would say, is like a city government, and the federal and the national government, the central government doesn't allow any space for land or for finance or for other matters, for that matter, the enforcement agencies to be transferred to the state government. So, and this is almost universal except for in Kerala, where a good number of functions, it is estimated 17 functions have been transferred, but we found not less than some 9 or 10 functions definitely have been transferred to the local body. But still, it's a long way to go. And so that's one of the ways. Now, what is the spirit of democratic governance, if you ask me? I think the spirit of democratic governance is that there has to be a complete match between the production process in the cities and the governance structures. And if that production process and governance structure, how do we build in that, bring in that match? To me, I think the only solution and the only answer is extreme form of democratic centralization. When I say extreme form of democratic centralization, what do I mean? I mean, is it very radical? It means, and here I would like to bring in the whole question of the right to the city framework. And the right to the city framework is very important for us to understand in the Indian context, because given the diversity in the Indian cities, given the kind of humongous inequity that has started existing and that has started further widening in the Indian cities, this is the only framework that can build layers of what I call democratizing the surplus, because cities definitely are creating phenomenal surplus. The point is, in any given capitalist society, this surplus is bound to happen in a country. There's nothing wrong in it. The point is, how do we democratize it? And governance, to me, where it is a matter of one's choice of electing representatives, but in the right to city framework, it is also a choice of one's planning. It's also a choice of one who plans for his or her own future in the city. And when I say one has to plan for his or her choice in the city, it means how do we democratize this surplus, the basic resources. The basic resources means the whole question of planning process that we have in the city. Now, the 74th Constitutional Amendment, I think, did envision a little bit, because it talked about ward sabhas, ward committees. I can tell you, not more than 2 or 3 states where you have even the ward sabhas existing. Forget about their functionalities. So Kerala, of course, you have, and I'm quite thrilled and excited that what radical ruptures we are bringing, what radical departures we are suggesting in the Kerala context. But overall, in the Indian context, I would say there's a huge gap. The way the cities are being planned, the way, and to me, I think one of the most important elements of democratization process and the process of democratization would be the process of planning. So just look across the country and tell me one state or one city where the planning is being done by the city governments. Forget about the people. So Mumbai, it's the Maharashtra, development authority. Delhi, it's a Delhi development authority, not even answerable to the state government. Forget about the city government. Likewise, we have all these development authorities, because through these developmental authorities, there are various intersectionalities that come into play, and that's how the control of the city is never lost, either by the state or by the central government. There's no harm, controlling the city, but the point is, then for whom is the city meant? So I think if I have to talk about democratizing the surplus and democratizing the whole apparatus of city government, then there are 3 or 4 elements that must be kept in mind. The first element is this whole process of planning. This planning has to be very bottom up, whereby the plan of from the ward and even in fact from the neighborhood level should be integrated into the ward. The ward plan should be integrated into the city, and then that's how your regional plans should be built. And it's not difficult. I mean, it's just building capacities in 5 or 10 years, and then it's a matter of, so once it gets adapted to the residents and the cities, I think it's not difficult. The second point is, and that is where the 74th Constitutional Amendment was, I would say, it's not that it was not concerned, but it was not a very driving principle at that time, and that is the whole question of migration. Now we have an estimated some 400 million people who are migrating from rural to urban, from urban to urban, and all sorts of things. I mean, I can tell you, Kerala, there's a huge number who move out, and another huge number that come in. Likewise, you have these large cities where this migration is a major issue. Now, how do we envision, how do we capture this whole question of migration into the city governance framework? I think that needs to be thought of. If you ask me, I have ways, not really, but we have tried to engage with this question in the Kerala context, because we are writing the urban policy for 25 years. In fact, we've already written, the draft is there. So there are ways, definitely. But once again, I would suggest that the ways lie within the city governance framework and the city governance structure. And that starts from, the neighborhood sabhas to getting them enrolled as electors, and also, making them participate in this entire governance structure. And this is completely minus. This is completely absent in the current city framework. Third, I think what is important is something which, again, 74th Constitutional Amendment did not envision, and is this whole question of climate change and its impact on the city. Because climate change is not just a matter of few climate scientists who are supposed to deal with it's a question of also city governance. And when I say city governance, because we will be building infrastructures in the cities, and the same infrastructure will be washed away or would be, taken away. And also because the kind of somewhere you'll have flooding, in some of the towns you'll have landslides. In other cities, mainland India, you'll have heat island effects, where again the work days would be lost. So when we talk about city governance, I think it is also to govern your own future. It's also to ensure that you have a secure future. So I think climate change and how the whole question of urban governance can be democratized, and these processes of building layers of working people, their associations, their framework into the city governance structure needs to be thought of. For example, in Kerala, there is this is what is being thought of having advisors to the mayors, and all sorts of things, and also bringing in a formal recognition of the migrant people and into the city and the climate framework. I think that's another area. And the fourth important, because it's not just the transition to what I say an urban revolution, but also the phenomenal number of young people who are being added to the city to the city to the cities and to the city frame, and we do not know how to involve them. I can tell you, if in a state like Kerala, 70% of the youth are alienated / unconcerned, then in rest of India, it would be 95% of the youth who are not even concerned about the cities, the way cities are growing, and it's not their fault. It's the way how cities are being built and developed. So I think these are the processes in which we have to work, and these are the processes in which we have to build layers of urban governance. And but as I said, the bedrock of this urban governance has to be extremely democratic, democratizing the surplus assets. And last is, I think, which is going to be the driving force, is land, the whole question of land, the whole question of ownership of the land. And when I say land, it's not just the structure of city governance, but also land, how it is being managed for the larger good of the people. I think what I call the urban commons. I think that I park myself here, and maybe we can take questions at that. Yeah, I'm listening.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful presentation and session, and for sharing your valuable insights on urban local governance, politics, and practice. Your perspective has greatly enhanced our understanding of the complex interplay between politics and administrative practices in urban governance. Now, I would like to invite our chair for her remarks.
Thank you. And thank you, Tikender ji. See, very interesting points that is came out. I feel about 2-3 points which we really need to discuss about. One, when he started with the huge demographic transitions that is happening, the urbanization, all pervasive things to understand, to kind of explore and to engage that with the issues that this urbanization is bringing. It's very important to look from that. What is this demographic transition brings in? What are the challenges? And how can we reimagine the spaces? So, and he was also saying about the kind of structural inequities with respect to the caste, with respect to gender, with respect to the class, with respect to means and modes of production, how this multiple forms of inequities that is bringing in. And when we are reimagining for a just transition, right now, SDG is also speaking about a just transition. And it is important to look from an urban just transition. So when we are looking for an urban just transitions, we need to understand when we are going for reimagining the structure, then are we going to produce systems that perpetuate the inequalities like this? Or are we going to produce something that questions, negotiate with these inequalities? And more importantly, Tikender ji also was speaking about the climate change, which is very important. That is what I was speaking about, just transition, where right now, like in all other spaces, global north is showing the way, showing the way for the just transition solutions. So that solutions from the global south, we need to critically engage with the solutions that has been given by the global north. And we need to come a solution from our histories, from our archaeologists, from our understanding to come out with, because our inequalities, histories are different from that of global north, and we have to come out with our own answers and solutions when we are looking for that. So it is important, like we have discussed about what are the issues of housing, what are the issues when you're speaking about the land, the whole issues of housing, when you're speaking about transport, what are the issues coming with the transport, when you're looking at the municipalities, how can we think about what's us to have a planning, which is very, very important. Looking at the resources what we have, how can we have a planning to discuss about these issues, where we are looking at the democratization of the cities, where we are bringing in a philosophical underpinning of an inclusiveness into the discourse of this governance. So it is important to see how this whole discourses can be made into a critical inquiry into the past, and how can we come out with a more equitable solutions, bringing in more people from the peripheries to the decision-making process, make Ward Sabha more meaningful, and then make this governance process more inclusive. How can we have it? Then that is where he was also discussing about the whole importance of resource management, the whole importance of inclusive planning from bottom up, and how can we democratize. And then more importantly, he was also discussing about the ownership of the land and the urban commons. So how it is important to speak about the urban commons when we are looking at the urban just transition. So the whole this urban policy, local governance, this program, we need to look at, how can we think about an urban just transition, looking at it from a social justice, looking at it from a climate justice, looking at it from an urban justice, looking at it from a resource justice perspective, and also looking at it from an epistemic justice, because that is all that is, contained in this, So with that, I would like to end, and then I would like the participants to take the opportunity, to grab the opportunity to ask the questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would like to, as ma'am already mentioned, we would now like to open the floor for questions. Participants may use the raise their hand feature, or may put in their questions in the Q&A box.
Okay, so there's no question, it seems, huh?
No, I have a question. I'll ask you.
Please, ma'am.
Yeah. See, right now in Maharashtra, we are working on, the localization of sustainable development goal, but with the rural spaces. So we are trying to see that how to integrate Gram Panchayat development plan, like the things that we are saying, bottom up things, and how can we engage the neighborhood plan into the Gram Panchayat plan. But coming to the, when we are looking at the same thing in the urban spaces, because of the heterogeneity and the large size. So how can we make this ward sabhas, and then the ward planning a reality? Is there any kind of, solutions that you're thinking about? Because we're always speaking about the neighborhood planning because of the sheer size and of the heterogeneity. How can we bring in that?
I think that's a very valid point, and that's what, for example, in Delhi, where a ward population would be 1 lakh people. So there, what we need to do is, and that's what in Kerala we've been discussing, is in Kerala they call the Aisle Sabha. Aisle Sabha is a neighborhood Sabha. So, so more and more neighborhood structures to be created. And through these neighborhood structures, how do we empower them? What would be the process of empowering them? I think is a question that will depend and vary from place to place. For example, Kerala, it's a very democratic, space where street is their theater. So so there it will be easier, but that won't apply for any other state or space. But at the same time, not just the neighborhood sabha. What about the working people groups in those associations? For example, your auto walas. For example, your different sections of the society that exist. So we have to envision. That's what we are envisioning in the Kerala context. not just the geographical neighborhood sabhas, but beyond that, in the entire ward, how to bring them together in this process is what, because I can't reveal more on that because it's a kind of recommendation, and so we've been recommending it. The government says no, we are not. So you understand, Professor Manjula, what I'm trying to say. So I think that those are the ways and the processes in which we need to build. And as you rightly pointed out, we are unlike the West. For example, if you go to Bonn, and I was a witness to it, the Bonn Council sits even 2 days, day and night, till they have addressed the full, complaints and the issues that have been raised by the citizens. They don't get up. I mean, they will sit all through the night. But Bonn is a different context. You can't imagine that to happen here. But though I would like a similar kind of situation to be happening even in India, where the city council doesn't get up, and people come straight away to the city council. But given the gigantic size and given the kind of clusters that we are getting developed now, I think it would be more prudent to experiment neighborhood sabhas more. So let's experiment the neighborhood sabhas, and let's try to give them some financial empowerment as well. And that empowerment, there can be processes, again, I don't reveal more, but there are processes and there are ways in which you can empower these neighborhood sabhas through the taxation system within the neighborhood. And I think that experiment needs to be tried and tested.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time and for patiently answering the questions. It was a pleasure listening to you. We hope to collaborate you with your future events, IMPRI events as well. And moving on forward, now I would like to begin
I
with
will be in touch with you soon.
Sure. So right now we'll be waiting for a month because we'll ask the government to give us the feedback. It's a big thing that's happening. Let me tell you, Professor Manjula. I mean, it's an exercise that consumed almost a year, and as I said, I'm so excited. And it's historic because nowhere this has been attempted. Right? I can tell you, we've given without the 2021 census, we have given demographic patterns for 100 years for Kerala. So now, because it's a 25 years window that we are looking at, so I can tell you right now what 2051 Kerala would be. It's gone on very scientific basis. So we know at least actually that has to be. So integration of bottom up and top bottom, because this cannot happen from below. So this you ought to have layers. So as I said, but I can actually explain and I can reveal that the overarching framework for Kerala urban policy is grounded on 3 or 4 basic elements: climate change, risk-informed planning process, equity-based urban development, and extreme form of democratic governance. That's all. Yeah. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Can I take your leave, ma'am? Avi?
Yeah, thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Be in
Thank
touch.
you so much, sir. Moving on forward, now I would like to begin with the fellows, creative project presentations and discussion. I will announce the names of the participants one by one, and accordingly, you all are requested to kindly follow the same. So the list goes. So first we have Adarsh ji. Adarsh ji, are you there?
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everybody. So
Others have not received your presentation, huh?
Ma'am, the presentation is a performance poetry. Should I send you the PDF of it?
Are you going to present it now?
Yes, ma'am. Would you need a copy of it?
Can we do one thing? You can actually, present the same on the screen right now, if that's possible. While you...
Actually, it's on my laptop and I've joined through the phone. Just give me a second. Is it okay if I just present it and then send a copy to you later?
Ma'am?
So what you're going to do now? You're going to present without anything. What? Even if you're sharing the screen, we'll be able to see it. What you're going to do? Others, I didn't get it.
Ma'am, it's poetry. So my preferred way, preferred medium of presentation was performance poetry. So I have it on a Word document, the poetry that I've written. And if needed, I can rejoin through my computer and share the screen as well.
Yeah, we need to.
Okay, okay. I will rejoin through the
Yeah,
computer.
so
Just give me-
exactly. You can join from the laptop and then you can share the screen for the same.
Yeah,
Okay, give me a minute or two.
We'll wait for you, surely.
yeah.
Okay.
We can have
Is
the
it
next
okay if I, is
person
it
to
okay
present.
if I, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and by the time you can join, because we
Thank you.
need to see it, no, otherwise won't be able to comment on it.
Understood, understood.
Yeah. So, Avi, can we go for call for the next person?
Sure, ma'am. Janani ji, can we have you?
Yes, ma'am. Just give me a minute. I'll just share my screen.
Surely.
Is my screen visible?
Yes. Could you please present it in the presentation mode so that it goes full screen?
Yeah, I'll just put it on full screen. Just give me.
Perfect.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes. Perfect.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm Janani Ranganathan, an architect and urban designer. My research focuses on urban governance, public participation, and inclusive spaces, particularly in underutilized areas. Today, I'll be presenting my research on the role of public participation and governance, designing spaces under flyovers, a study of commoning and gender-inclusive public spaces. The study explores how neglected urban spaces, particularly under flyovers, can be reimagined into vibrant common through governance, public involvement, and gender-sensitive framework. To set the context, public spaces are multifunctional areas that act as hubs for social interaction, economic activities, and cultural exchange. However, flyover underpasses, which are abundant and yet underutilized, often face issues of neglect, poor planning, and exclusion. At the same time, urban commons emerge as a powerful concept. These are shared spaces managed collaboratively by the community to serve collective needs rather than profit-driven goals. These are some of the keywords: public space, commoning, governance, gender inclusive spaces under flyover. So public participation ensures that the voices of the community shape the design of the under flyover spaces, making them relevant and inclusive. Governance provides the framework for managing and sustaining these spaces effectively. Commoning transforms these areas into shared resources, fostering collaboration and collective ownership. Lastly, the gender inclusivity ensures that these spaces are safe and accessible for everyone. So through this slide, we can see that there are a lot of research papers that speak about this concept. Urban areas face immense pressure to optimize space, but traditional urban design often lacks inclusivity, particularly for gender. There is a gap that can be identified here. Hence, my study explores how public participation and governance can transform these overlooked areas into more functional, sustainable, and gender-inclusive public spaces. Public participation is very critical for the success of any urban space design. For under flyover spaces involving local communities to ensure relevance and ownership while preventing top-down discontinued interventions. A successful example of urban commoning includes marketplaces, recreational zones, art spaces under flyovers, where the community takes part in the management and the care of the areas. Some of the key questions that has come out from the initial research are how do governance policies influence public space design, especially under flyovers? Are there gender equity and commoning practices as a part of public participation? And if so, what is their impact? And if not, will they create an impact? What role does public participation play in transforming these spaces into urban commons? How does public participation influence the design of public spaces? The objectives of the research would be the following: analyzing public participation, governance framework, and gender-specific design challenges, understanding the role of public participation and how it involves the design and use of public spaces, understanding the role of governance in transforming under flyover spaces, analyzing how the governance facilitate or hinder public participation in public spaces. Regarding the methodology, my research employs a mixed method approach where I'll be talking about the qualitative and the quantitative methods. The qualitative methods will include interview with stakeholders, urban planners, policymakers, then case study analysis and observations, whereas the quantitative methods would include surveys, spatial mapping, analysis of existing under flyover spaces. My primary case study would be two places. One, the Kattipara Urban Square in Chennai, which is actually a properly designed spaces where it has some permanent shops, as well as there are some activities happen based on exhibitions and etc. And the second is the Newtown Bridge in Bishwabangla Sarani in Kolkata, where it is mainly only where some kind of activities happen during certain parts of the year. Secondary case studies would include similar examples in diverse locations, mostly in metropolitan cities. Just to give a context, the picture here, which we can see, is the Newtown Bishwabangla Sarani under flyover space. This was during one of the exhibitions that happened there, where the local craftsmen had actually put up a lot of stalls. And this picture is from the urban square in Kattipara, where this is a huge scale project, and the similar happens in one chunk of the area, where the others are all multifunctional. So I'm planning to go through both of them. The scope includes focus on use of spaces under flyovers, emphasizing the role of public participation and governance, highlighting the gender dimension of the public spaces. Whereas for limitations, there are two major limitations. One, that it is drawn only from specific flyovers in cities. These findings may not be universally applicable because there are local contexts that fall into the place. And the second being that it focuses only on the generic gender, whereas without delving into the non-binary or other gender identities. The research also applies to theories like urban common theory, which is for shared space governance, environmental psychology theory, which tells us about user behavior, the gender and space theory for addressing any inequalities that can be seen, and placemaking theory for inclusive community-driven design. This research critically evaluates current participatory processes, highlighting significant gaps such as limited inclusivity, etc. It provides insights into how under flyover spaces can be revitalized into vibrant urban commons through participatory governance and exclusive design. To conclude, this study highlights the need for collaborative efforts between communities and urban and governance bodies to reclaim underutilized spaces under flyovers. By integrating public participation and promoting commoning and ensuring gender inclusivity, we can transform these neglected areas into thriving urban commons that serve diverse needs. Thank you all for the attention and your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Janani, I feel that you have made an interesting presentation, and I really do think that this can bring a very interesting, especially when you're looking at the urban commoning. with a specific focus on gender inclusiveness. That will be very interesting when you're looking at, because I have not heard about much of the study. So this would be a very interesting value addition to the existing thing. And when you're looking, especially when you're looking at the gender and space, and also looking with the theoretical framework of placemaking, as you're saying, and also looking at urban commoning. So please try to bring a conceptual map between these three elements. That is one, that is urban commoning. Second one, gender and space. Third one, how can we have a more inclusive placemaking process? So if we can have these three coming together and discussing about it, then the whole question of, critically engaging, because people are all speaking about, even now Tikender ji also speaking about urban common. But then using this as a very interesting space to see what is urban commoning, how is urban commoning is coming up, what is this ideology, and in practice and design, whether it is coming up, and this whole question of, violence of the city, because we are all the time we are discussing about violence in the city, but city itself is violent, the structure is violent, the design of the city is violent. So here you can also speak about, through this urban commoning, through the infrastructure facilities and designing of the cities, whether this place is accessible, available, affordable to women, and then whether that is any form of gender-based violences, and whether that you can think through that lens and bring about it.
Okay, ma'am.
Whether what is the structure of violence of the city.
Okay, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. I'll look into that lens once also.
Yeah, everyone will be speaking about violence in the city, but then violence of the city, because the structure of the city itself is violent.
Yes, ma'am. I'll try and look into through that lens.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Janani, for the wonderful presentation. Moving on next, can we have you for the presentation?
Yeah, I'm here. Just a second, I'll share the screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is. I mean, have you opened the PDF yet? Because
One second.
Yeah.
It's actually a Word document. I'm sorry, I could not make it look very presentable. I didn't have the idea that I'd have to present it like this. Okay, so my research is on the vulnerability and barriers in the formation of a queer movement, a study of genderqueer individuals in Delhi, India. And I chose my mode of presentation as performance poetry. I've written a little bit about it's a poetry from different lenses, different queer lenses, and based on the research that I've done and textual inferences that I've gotten and an interview that I've conducted, I've written this poetry, and the total time it might take would be around 4 minutes. So may I start?
Sure,
Okay. Mother, I am many. Mother, have you seen how come winter, Delhi and all its cities fill with colors momentarily? A statement or token of queerity, revoking ideas and misbalancing what was slowly merging into the normal. I have seen it standing at roadsides asking for hafta. I see as the others playing by the state market nexus, friends of Manu, other me's that never looked or felt quite like me, appropriating all that's mine, the pain, the history, reflecting the colors of the antariksh, smile at me, offering me a place on the same streets where I grew and live with constant policing, purging and purification, satiated by articles from some constitution that I can't read. Mother, I am many. Mother, have you read about the Tawayifs and their culture, the eunuchs, the music, the dance, the non-conformity and reversed role of gender in household? Oh, what a celebration, because I have read it through 1,000 eyes, eyes that can read, eyes that can't. Sometimes I do wonder where they went. Was it the same nationalist project that killed a culture where I too had a place to remember, another time where I am being transfixed and my agency is being edged into satire? In glorification of a golden age, I too have become a political token, Indian enough to be named in policies that bore out of rage and othering, not Indian enough for representation in the houses. Mother, I am many. Mother, do you also know the feeling of scattered sunlight falling on naked skin in winters, or the sight of leaves rustling in the cold breeze in the Lutyens' playgrounds? I have felt it through 1,000 skins. I have felt it the same as the eyes of house owners when they looked at me with my short hair and my partner in their pants, denying us the place to live, terming us lesbians derogatorily. Who I am now makes me cry. I scrounged through pages thinking personal is political, looking for the point where feminism might still speak for me, caught between constitutional and social morality, crushed by law reforms that left us out, enabling blackmail, juxtaposing my dignity with disgust. Mother, I am many. Mother, have you heard how come winter the air gets thicker and the screeching sounds of lorries and trucks filled with metal and oil become closer in the city air? They echo. I have heard it through the walls with 1,000 ears, when the many me were called minuscule in the courts, when we were forced to comply and made active, confirming citizens, or when we were blamed for our lack of efforts, or when the courts were thought to have overstepped their jurisdiction just because someone who could spoke for the many me. I was there when the jargons of transformative constitutionalism lost all their meanings because the person behind bars was me. But in all of this, I am tired, I am bruised, I am broken as slivers shedding off of my many own bodies poke me, infect me, and leave me in the waiting room to justice. I don't know who I am, for I am many. I don't know if I can ever be one, or should I ever be one, with voices so diverse that they sometimes even run parallel to what could have been, or the many could have beens that run parallel to the voices. Will the many of me forever be a human equivalent of an innovation stamp on a project of archaic glorification earned and started in the name of freedom but soon becoming communal rage? We will be one, or will we break each other being consumed by this religious project? How do you foresee an emotion of identity? How do you foresee an act of treason done in threat of identity? Will I ever be one, for I am many? Or am I better in the 1,000 colors, bold and strong and screaming, existing, overlapped, intersecting, but the truth, Ana al-Haq, as Sarmad once said, Mother, Mother, I am many. Thank you.
Yeah, Adarsh.
Yes,
Yeah, you know like that. Can you please also tell me that this very interesting? First of all, you know, like very interesting, very strong one. I like it very much. But then would like to know, you know, like that. This is also research.
yes.
How good to, but then you also need to, you know, that there is a poem that is coming out. It is just not a poem. It is not an emotional thing. It also speaks from multiple theoretical lenses, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, so I feel that okay, now you need either have a preface which discuss about, you know, how you have been informed about this poem, because you know like that when you are writing, then you are using your agency to write the poem, and that agency is not coming from vacuum. There is a socio-political cultural space through which you are using your agency to write this poem. So, and then it is important to animate that agency to see the see the readers, to understand that from where you are coming, how you are informed, what is the politics of this poem. So, you know, so then when you're looking at that, there is two things, Adarsh, I feel. One is politics of representation, and the other one is okay, there is an aesthetics of representation. So you can look at, you know, like the aesthetics of representation, looking at how of representation. How there is a representation, and you're using this poem to represent the feelings of multitudes of these issues, and how it's getting neglected, and then that is being through the lens of morality, through the lens of constitution, through the lens of legality, through the lens of administration, how that has been again scattered. So that is what you're saying. So then that is aesthetics there. But then there is the politics of representation, no? Why of representation? So then when you're using this poem as a means to represent the multitudes of the LGBTQI issues that is prevailing in India, and then it is also important to look at the why of representation, you know, the politics of your politics, you know, where you have to come out, you know, like what are the political things that animate this poem, you
Understood,
know.
ma'am.
So it is
Ma'am, that is
interesting to
something that
bring that.
that is something that I was feeling. So when I started writing the poem, I wanted to write through a multitude of lenses, but I found a lack of reflexivity because I didn't know where exactly I could in a research paper I can
No, I can give you the hints, you know. See,
Okay.
because when you're looking at it, each of your paragraph is speaking about. You look at, you know, what are the central themes that is coming from each of these paras. For one, you're saying when you're saying about the legality, one you're saying about, you know, multitudes of moralities, and once you're saying about the multitudes of sexualities, multiple sexualities. So okay, try to, you know, like animate that thing through that, you know. So you can also looking at through the Burgess lens of, you know, surveyor. One is that's a panoptic case of surveying, and you're being surveyed, you know. So then that also makes multiples of you, you know. So like Julia Christopher is speaking about, you know, this whole question about, you know, performativity. Continuously we need to perform, and once I'm performing, you know, like which self that I will be taking out to perform it, you know. So then, you know, like see the whole question. One, I can give you something about, you know, how the Foucault, the postmodernist understanding, is saying about questioning the solid subjectivity. That is what you're doing.
Yes.
He's questioning I, you know, I as a solid subjectivity, because he says there is no solid subjectivity, there's multitudes of I in you,
Right.
you know. So
Ma'am, we can't hear you. I guess that's because of the internet connection.
can you see me?
Ma'am, you're audible, but then we cannot see your screen.
No idea, but at least I'm audible. Yeah.
Yeah, you
So,
are,
yeah,
you're
I have no idea why it is, you know.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
it's all perfect.
Yeah. So this whole question that, you know, you have to look at that. How come, you know, like there's a multitudes of self in you, you know, and then how the technologies of the self, because you are also looking at the technologies of self. Each time I'm seeing multiples of me in me, then I need to navigate through the multitudes of me in me to see the performative lens through which I need to see the me in me, to see the others, to see that me in me, which I want to see. Right.
Understood, ma'am.
So because that is what she's saying about performativity. Each time, you know, right now I'm sitting before you as a person who would like to say as a chair of UPGLF, but there is something else of me, you know, as a mother, as a lover, as a wife, you know, multitudes of me. So which one that at this point of time I would like to see you to see me in me, that, you know.
Understood.
And that is also important. That is where I'm claiming my agency. So you can bring, you know, this interesting ways of, you know, understanding how you are animating it, and what is the way of, you know, even when I'm seeing you, then I would like me to see me in like this, you know. So then there is a way of, you know, when you're saying that you are looking at me, but I would like you to look at me the way I want you to look at me. So how is it? That is, please read Burgess' Ways of Seeing. Burger,
Understood.
Ways of Seeing, where, you know, like he's looking at, you know, the whole question of surveyor and surveyed. How 24/7, you know, like that the self is split into this, which is again the Foucault was saying about the whole question of panoptic gaze. So you can bring in this interesting, you read this and bring in this interesting theoretical framework that animates this, and also write, you know, either preface to this poem or something after this poem, how that, you know, like as the politics of representation, how your politics has been animated through this and how you got informed. That will be good.
Understood. Thank you so much, ma'am.
And also, very importantly, one more thing, and how it is important in an urban space, at least something, because this is the urban policy governance fellowship. So
I know
somewhere it is also important
I've
because
been
the city
striking
as a
that.
space, you know, you are actually bringing that. But also when you're analyzing how the city as a space is also have its kind of exclusions, you know, city is excluding me. as an LGBTQI, how the cities, my right to the cities is being denied.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Adarsh, what a beautifully written iteration was that. We have also been joined by Mr. Sameer Unhaleji, Joint Commissioner, Department of Municipal Administration, Government of Maharashtra, Urban Practitioner, visiting Senior Fellow IMPRI. Sir, I would like to request you to kindly share your remarks on the same.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm traveling in the usual evening metro traffic, so probably my camera will be off, but I hope I am audible enough.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, I would like to congratulate IMPRI and also Bharti ma'am for taking conceptualizing this fellowship on urban policy and also executing and seeing it through the all this 10 12 weeks, because it is extremely important that the body of knowledge is available and it develops and is deliberated, discussed, co-created. So I think it's a very important initiative by both IMPRI and Bharti ma'am, so congratulations on that. And also all the participants who have joined. It is, as it is often said, you may not be interested in public policy, but public policy is very much interested in you. So we ought to, of course, the field of public policy or the discipline, so to say, probably is of recent use, at least in India. We all had political science as the main department in universities, which also had a small part of it of public administration. And a part of that also was public policy. We had probably a topic in our paper in public administration. So that journey here in which public policy is one of the main proponent in governance is, I think, a welcome move. So, as we had discussed earlier, also, I'll just repeat some points on that. As the what is public policy, of course, is the first thing. So, in my definition, any and everything that government does or does not do, can be a part of public policy. One. Secondly, the Constitution of India is the fountainhead of public policy in India for any and every action of the government uh, through whichever forms of public policy are available. Obviously, have to follow the constitutional framework. So, any action of government which is beyond that, obviously, will get struck down. So, public policy is, of course, not only making acts and rules, but also missions and centrally sponsored programs and budgetary allocations and establishing institutions, recruiting people, by giving budgetary allocations and all those entire paraphernalia which can be subsumed under this sort of concept of public policy. So when we look at urban India and public policy, obviously some elements emanate from the Constitution of India, like the most importantly the seventh schedule, in which the municipality is and land is very much a state subject. So there are obvious limitations onto what a central government, union government or union parliament and central government can do in urban issues when we speak of public policy. So you will not find a single act made by government of India or passed by the union parliament on municipal issues, because it's a state list and therefore all the 28 states would be having their own statutes on the all aspects of urban policy. Of course, for union territories, it is the central government and the union parliament which will be making the necessary regulatory framework and also devising the public policy framework for urban issues. Now, of course, we do. I mean, I do feel, this 1850 we had the first All India Act. It's 1850 during the British East India Company's time, which allowed this. The first act was made, which was applicable to all the British India territory. And then we are now into 2025. So it's almost 175 years have happened by which this transition, the primacy of the municipal system in managing the urban areas in India. That way is established. But as we know, we are seeing many changes now. We are in 2025 and staring at the challenges that Indian cities and India's urban system will be facing in next 15 to 20 years, for which your expertise in public policy and knowledge of urban India will be of utmost use. Like we talk of climate change, we talk of black swan events, we talk of pandemics, we talk of uncertain economic situations, we talk of in and emanating from that are the new I feel sometimes echo chambers, like repetition on inclusion, then resilience, then carbon net zero, then sustainable cities and green cities and all those things. So probably when I look at next coming 20 years, what I feel is that looking at this from the context of public policy, we will have to be probably prepare a new, as I sometimes say, ontology. What is urban now? The definitions of urban, the issues of peri-urban areas, the issues of mobility. We all are traveling, and 80%, if you look of Delhi or NCR or Mumbai, maybe 2 crore people are traveling every day here and there. So that creates a new element of how the urban areas will have to be looked at. Then we of course have to look at delivery of urban areas like the water supply, roads, urban transport, electricity, data. How will are we going to prepare the public policy context for these things? So as I probably, of course, I'm speaking more from a practitioner's experience. So probably it will be more on the. Yes, so as you must have hearing, we are stuck up in a traffic jam and everybody is honking. So no issue about it. So that's what I feel, So maybe at this cohort of young, interested people who have taken the efforts and pain to study on urban public policy. We also need to think how the situation would change in next 20 years, and the time consuming in public policy and any public functioning, as you know, is quite high, and therefore anticipating things maybe 2 years prior, 3 years prior is a very important skill set that public policy formulation requires in urban spaces, because we have to anticipate what might happen after 3 years. And one of few of the major challenges that you are looking at in mostly the metropolitan, even the small and medium towns, essentially is something that we missed maybe last 10 and 15 years, despite we made significant budgetary allocations, institution programs, we developed certain, multi-ministry initiatives. Yet now we see that the efforts are bit, not up to the mark, and precisely that's a lesson for us as to how would we developing public policy for urban India for next 15 years or next 20 years. So I think that anticipation is going to be very important for the youth who are, will be involved or interested in this public and legal issue in local governance. Now, of course, as we know, another, I'm just sharing certain thoughts and which I feel will be more important. Like, we of course, when we talk of constitutional amendments, the famed 74th Constitutional Amendment Act is always is oft very strongly spoken, regularly spoken is this. Uh, Uh, I think I'm audible, is it? Yeah, yeah, sorry. And please let me know if I'm audible, because I won't be knowing if the sound is going through.
Yes,
So,
sir.
yeah, thank you. Yeah. So and in fact, as I say, I'm trying to speak more on the next 20 years and in the contours and, that might emerge for the public policy in urban and local government. Is of course, we don't have a single legislative or policy framework as to how you are going to govern, administer, manage, serve a metropolitan area. I think that's only the reference in constitution, even in 74th is there that a big area, maybe 2 million plus, can be called metropolitan. But there is no governance structures as of now. What the Constitutional Amendment Act has introduced is essentially a land use planning framework and maybe social economic planning framework for that. But the governance structure for metropolitan area is missing. If you look at the Paris network, it is a 3-tier structure. of Paris, of in the major corporation, the smaller one, and the local counties, or not counties, but the smaller parts, as they call it. So this, I think, is a major challenge that we need to think as to how you are going to manage a 5,000 square kilometer area with, say, 20 million population, or 15 million population, or 10 million population. So we are stuck up in the municipal framework municipal fix, and maybe of some like electricity supply and maybe water supply. So this, I think, is a major area where India will have to think of and come up with, a proper public policy framework. It may be an act, it may be rule, it may be institutions, it may be budgetary allocations, it may be public-private partnership, it may be direct governance, it may be community-based engagement. So, the levers that are available in public policy will have to be used for conceptualizing as to how next 10, 15 years are going to be. And that's, I believe, is one of the greatest challenge in urban policy, urban and local government policy making. Further, I always felt, maybe when we are talking of public policy, it is essentially a art and science of conceptualizing and devising a specific set of actions. When you are attaching a regulatory touch to it with the approval of the legislature, then it becomes an act. If you are doing it in maybe a delegated legislation, it becomes a rule. If you are going to create maybe an action program, it will be a centrally sponsored scheme or a central sector scheme. And most importantly, at the city level, very often the public policy by the city government is also equally important as to what a city is going to do for a specific challenge. Now, if you're to looking of the traffic of, say, Delhi, NCR, or maybe Mumbai or Bangalore, or even Chennai, you find what exactly is the setup we are trying to think on that. How exactly who is managing what in mobility in maybe Indian city, metropolitan. Like, you have locals and trains which are dealt by the central government railway department. Then you have the state transport running, the city bus running, the new metro companies are now coming. There might be, LRTS which might be coming, BRTs is there. So if you just look at a single sector in maybe the Indian bigger metropolitan cities, then you realize the richness or the differing varying issues that are to be considered as a public policy formulator, if you want to formulate a public policy. Like what about the intersectoral changes? Like, we have multiple agencies is often a major issue. So what are we going to do about the multiple agencies, say, like in big metropolitan governance, regarding who has the power to do what and who can raise which taxes, and how will be the operational issues will speak with each other. Are we going to stick up to the metropolitan planning committee, which is essentially a budgetary allocating mechanism as far as the current understanding goes of the metropolitan or the district planning committees? And then obviously, then 2 points I will just like to add. Probably I just let me know till what time I should be speaking. Otherwise I would continue to speak. So please let me know by what time should I. It is 7:24 in my clock. By what time should I close my just expression, my sharing of thoughts? Just let me know. It's 7:24 in my clock. What time should I stop, ma'am?
Sir, in about a couple of minutes would be
So the
good. We
couple
have
of
a few
minutes
more
will be 2 minutes
presentations.
then probably.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So maybe second, of course, issues is in public policy, it will be delivery of civic services. How are you going to do that? See, regarding land use planning, how are you going to plan the land? Is it going to be micro planning? It is going to be general. To what extent are we going to allow market to take role of it? Like in Mumbai, we have the Dharavi project of almost, maybe 2 lakh crores, which is being now apparently being done in PPP with the industrial house. So how are we going to think of affordability in housing in a city? what is the, what are the rules and regulations we are going to make it. So these are also important practical issues of public policy in India's urban system. We spoke mostly of metropolitan areas, but also the small towns, the medium towns, the towns below, say, a million, below 10 lakh, below 5 lakh, above 3 lakh, are also a new, set of challenges that we are seeing in urban India as to how are we going to develop the tools of use the tools of public policy and prepare a policy framework so that the ultimate goals of sustainable, livable, happy, safe, inclusive, resilient, carbon net zero, and etc. cities can be there. So quality of life is also an important element, which is a guiding principle as such for all the activities that ultimately take place in the urban spaces. And I am sure it's going to be an extremely important sector, urban policies, because half of the one third of India is now urban, and it will continue to happen till next 15, 20 years. So public policy obviously has great scope, and I wish you all the best for anything. And my WhatsApp number is available. I may not able to take the phone, but please feel free to connect with me on any deliberations you want. The number can be taken from. Thanks a lot for everything, and congratulations to Bharathy ma'am and also IMPRI for taking this very important initiative. So thanks. Thank you a lot. So I will stop here and request you to take guide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us and sharing your valuable insights with us. Moving on forward, we have Meenuji with our presentation next.
Just give me a second. My internet is quite bad, so I'll just, I hope it's okay if I just switch off the video and proceed.
Sure, ma'am. Good, yes.
Is it visible in full screen now?
Yes, ma'am, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Avi. So I'll be presenting on the topic, the feminization of responsibility and obligation. I'll be looking at women of Kudumbashree in 2 cities, in Kochi as well as in Trivandrum. And so Kerala's Kudumbashree program is celebrated for women's empowerment and poverty alleviation, but it has also equally met with criticism that it entrenches patriarchal inequalities by overburdening women with unpaid labor while excluding men from these shared responsibilities. So I wanted to interrogate whether such empowerment does it mask systemic inequalities, or does it urge transformative approach that redistributes roles and challenges deep-rooted gender power dynamics. So essentially, we are trying to look at the question, are there better practices to best practices? So here's an overview. Moving on. To introduce the topic, the Kudumbashree initiative originated within the socio-political framework of the People's Plan movement in Kerala, which was a pioneering participatory governance strategy that was launched in the year 1996. And it was a grassroots engagement in planning and decision making, and it was part of this 9th 5-year plan and part of the decentralization of state power. Now, Kudumbashree's foundation was built on the lessons of community development societies experiments, which were earlier conducted in Alappuzha and Malappuram districts of Kerala, and which were themselves influenced by NABARD's SHG bank linkage program. So the difference here of NHG from SHGs is that it incorporates both financial cooperation and participatory planning and grassroots development. So on your right side, you will see the structure of CBOs in Kudumbashree. It has a 3-tier structure, and it is overseen by a monitoring and advisory committee. Moving on. let's talk about the successes of Kudumbashree because it is very important to acknowledge those. It has had a transformative impact in the socio-political and economic landscape of Kerala with respect to poverty alleviation, decision-making, and in political participation. Now, almost 46 lakh women are currently enrolled in 1,072 CDS, Community Development Societies in Kerala. And there are micro enterprises. Then there are collectives like Ksheerasagaram, which is for milk production in Idukki. This is quite a rural example, but then there are examples of the Kudumbashree initiatives being there all throughout Kerala, like the community kitchens, which were quite prevalent during the pandemic. Then the Ashraya initiative for vulnerable families, Snehita initiative for to save a family from despair, and it also dealt with quite sensitive topics like domestic abuse and sexual violence. Then there was also gender. So to empower women, there were gender self-learning programs and gender corners. It led to an awareness of rights among women, and it also led to distress response. Then right now, there is also a skill acquisition program by the Gender Resource Center. Sorry. Yeah. So here you can find I got this from the CDS office in Elur, Ernakulam. And the Snehita is in Kakanad, which is nearby. And there is also a gender news bulletin. Then there are, so to transliterate this, it is against gender-based violence. And this is also to encourage people to report gender-based violence and domestic abuse. And the keywords that I'll be introducing today would be, most importantly, the feminization of responsibility and obligation. This was introduced by Sylvia Chant in her work on the same topic. And the idea is that when so most of the microcredit and SHGs target women. And we also know that women are the worst affected by poverty. So feminization of responsibility refers to the increasing expectation that women should shoulder these economic and caregiving initiatives, duties, often internalizing them as obligatory. That is, women have to do all those things. Because earlier we had a more strict separation between where women were relegated to household duties and men were essentially the breadwinners. However, this has changed, but men have not yet successfully ventured into our kitchens and spaces that have been traditionally claimed by women. The feminization of obligation highlights the limited agency of women in that they have in fulfilling these roles, even when the burdens exceed their capacity. So essentially, the women have been used as conduits of policy. They are considered as the primary beneficiaries and agents. You will see this in the ration card scheme or the Ujjwala Yojana scheme, where so ration cards are made in women's name. And obviously, these are not, so the presentation is not critiquing those things, but there are certain underlying problems that we ought to address in order to see the full picture. So what is the state doing to alleviate women of their triple burden? The triple burden refers to when you have to earn, when you have to do your domestic chores, when you have to do your caretaking and reproductive roles. So how can the state help women navigate this triple shift? And how can the perceptions be changed? Is the state doing anything regarding that? That is the first question. The second question is that the women who normally, something to note is that women who normally partake in Kudumbashree activities cannot outsource their domestic and caregiving obligations to paid labor like women in white-collar jobs or women who are entrepreneurs who are very well off can do that. So are women able to balance the various responsibilities? Are they finding time for leisure? Do they feel obligated to provide? Is their altruism being exploited? Essentially, is what we're trying to answer. Now, I mainly referred to Chand's work, then feminization of obligation, largely stems from Molyneux and Bradshaw's work. Then unpaid development labor was coined by Professor J. Deviga in 2016, and triple shift was also the very famous term was coined by Duncombe and Marsden in 1995. Then when you look at structural and intersectional inequalities, we look at intersectionality. So how do women who are experiencing multiple disadvantages at once, let's say caste, class, religion, etc., how do these factors compound gender-based disadvantages? Then Sylvia Bowlby talked about patriarchal structures. So how do these affect them? And we'll also be looking at symbolic empowerment, then patriarchal bargains, and the call for inclusive development. Now, just to introduce some theoretical frameworks here. Let's look at the economic capital. So Bodu talked about 4 forms of capital. So in economic capital, while Kudumbashree aims to enhance women's economic capital through microfinance and entrepreneurship, it often reinforces existing gender divisions of labor, limiting women's access to and control over economic resources. With respect to social capital, women's participation in NHGs can potentially increase their social capital because they are interacting with more people, but this is often contingent upon their ability to navigate patriarchal norms and gendered hierarchies within their communities. And when you look at the cultural capital, Kudumbashree can be seen as a site for the production and reproduction of cultural capital, particularly for women. However, the dominant cultural norms often reinforce gendered expectations, limiting women's agency and autonomy. With regards to symbolic capital, women's participation in Kudumbashree can enhance the symbolic capital. However, this is often accompanied by increased social obligations and responsibilities, which can be simultaneously both empowering and burdensome. Next is Howard Becker's labeling theory. And women are often labeled as altruistic, sacrificial entities, especially within the context of development and poverty alleviation. This labeling can lead to the normalization of their overwork and under recognition of the same. Then we have the concept of intersectionality proposed by Crenshaw, where the experiences of women within Kudumbashree are shaped by intersecting factors such as caste, class, religion, etc. And they can exacerbate or mitigate the impact of gender-based inequalities. Moving on, we talk about mobilities for social avenues for social mobility and patriarchal bargain. So Kudumbashree provides avenues for physical and social mobility, and especially in cities, it provides women a space to be, and it creates a certain space for them that did not exist beforehand. While it may provide opportunities for visible socioeconomic empowerment, it often fails to address the challenges of deeply entrenched patriarchal structures as it resorts to the method of patriarchal bargain so as to not upset the status quo. And here you can see an interesting diagram by Sivaj, who looked at the physical mobility of different members of the family and the patriarchal bargain. So the patriarchal bargain is also quite evident here because when mother-in-laws essentially they bargain with patriarchy and they strike a deal which is in their favor, and it essentially turns the table in their favor. So that is known as patriarchal bargain. And patriarchal structures, in Sylvia Bowlby's Theorizing Patriarchy, she proposed 6 structures or 6 forms by which patriarchy operates, and 3 of which will be explored here: the patriarchal state, the patriarchal relations in paid work, and the patriarchal relations in culture. And interestingly, state policies and programs, including Kudumbashree, can reinforce patriarchal norms and expectations. While, okay, let's move on. Right. So the objectives of the study would be to investigate the unintended consequences of Kudumbashri on women's leisure and responsibilities. Here we can kind of use the Marxist framework on leisure as a way of self-actualization and to explore the reluctance of authorities to involve men in poverty alleviation in Kudumbashri and how this reinforces patriarchal structure. An interesting fact is that Kudumbashri literally it translates to welfare of the family, but then you won't see a lot of male members being involved. It is largely relegated to a responsibility that women have to shoulder. So again, we also try to analyze the burden of unpaid labor on women and its impact on their empowerment. So the research questions are authorities reluctant to involve men? And how do male attitudes and frustration influence women's roles? And what roles do uh, unpaid developmental labor play in shaping women's experiences in Kudumbashri? And how do women perceive their increased responsibilities within the program? And what alternatives do they have? So the methodology is that I used the qualitative method with semi-structured interviews and focus group discussions. And the sampling was purposive and convenience-based no-more sampling. And all respondents have an education level of higher secondary diploma or below. There were 12 respondents, including secretaries and various office bearers of Kudumbashri wings, sitting chairpersons, and ordinary members. With respect to data sources, as I said, the primary data are the same. Secondary data sources involved analysis of Kudumbashri policy documents, government reports, political speeches, and relevant academic literature. The research sites were Kochi and Tirunelveli city because these are the largest urban cities in Kerala. And also because in Trivandrum, you have the Kudumbashri State Mission and Kochi also. And also to notice the differences between the two places because Trivandrum, being the capital city, has a higher presence of the government. But Kochi, the government is a lot more subdued because there is a lot more presence of private sector. It is essentially an IT hub or a much more. It is a financial capital essentially. So the difference. So we need to see how the Kudumbashri operated differently in both cities. And the methods were methods are shown here, and the ethical concerns were followed. Like they were ethical questions were kept up with, and they were followed to the norm. And so there was informed consent and confidentiality, and power dynamics were also respected. Power dynamics here means that women were not considered as victims of patriarchy, but rather we need to see how they have been negotiating with it and how they have overcome it and how they are navigating it currently. And so the results were, there were changing attitudes. That is, participants were well aware of the stereotypes in public discourse surrounding Kudumbashri meetings. So there are certain prejudices that women in Kudumbashri are there to gossip, they are there to waste their time. And this was initially it was an urban legend that women go to Kudumbashri just to gossip. But then women respondents themselves are very conscious of this, and they have actively countered and challenged these notions, highlighting the constructive work that they have been doing. And disputes mostly surrounded financial matters, and such as defaulting of loans. And here, interestingly, there is a difference in the respondents' opinions. Better of Kudumbashri members opposed humiliating defaulters in meetings, while lower earning peers acknowledged that it strained their relationships. And it is understandable because they contribute a larger share of their income to these initiatives like the thrift. And when it is being defaulted, they equally share the responsibility to combat even to the both well-off members and the lesser well-off members share equal responsibility. So one can understand how it would be more burdensome for a lower earning peer. Then women noted increased receptiveness and support from male family members for their participation in Kudumbashri. This is in contrast to what it would have been like 10 or 15 years ago. However, some families, particularly the well-off upper caste households with multiple male earning members, still view it as an unnecessary use of women's time because they consider that there is less support for these women because they consider it as because they say that there are already other sources for income, and there is a kind of an unsettling push against the same. Then, with respect to community, all women, without exceptions, reported a feeling of community within Kudumbashri, and many admitted to airing their grievances during meetings and sharing their problems. Then, awareness and agencies. So, one interesting thing was that many women reported that they feel confident in going to a bank, in doing transactions, and learning more about the banking system. So this has actually improved their financial agencies, and they are more aware of their rights. They have their own income and credit source. So they are willing to take on greater responsibilities and roles despite limited formal education. As I said, most of these people do not have a degree. They ended their studies with a diploma or a class 12th degree. Now, almost all respondents cited the biggest advantages as increased social capital and improved agency. Then, onto the decision-making part of it, most of the households reported combined decisions in financial and household matters. However, here is where things get a little murky. With respect to time and responsibilities, nearly all women reported facing time constraints. And leisure becomes an issue here. So the questions were to I essentially asked them to break up their day into different duties that they did or the different jobs that they did, and like most of them said that they did not have time for leisure. And even when some of the respondents talked about leisure, they were talking about looking after their children.
Meenuji, are you there? You're not audible. Should we
or so hello?
yes, ma'am, you were not audible in between, so we lost track of the presentation.
So where was this?
Okay, so I guess on the third or the fourth point, wherever you were.
So this is all covered.
This is all done, yes.
Yeah, the last one. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So to continue, 3 to 4 interviewees admitted that Kudumbashree's programs and festivities led to increased workload, and this further constrained their already constrained time. And women found it difficult to regularly attend meetings. So one of the CDS chairpersons told me that usually when they can't attend a meeting in 6 months in a row, they are usually not like their membership is terminated, but then they are kind of relaxing these requirements because women are finding it hard to attend these meetings, especially those with remunerative work. Even if they want to, they can't because they have to juggle their remunerative work, financial responsibilities. Most of them are buying groceries for their own homes. They are essentially the providers, especially those with remunerative work. They do the household chores. They are engaged in the caregiving responsibilities. And nearly all interviewed CDS members and office bearers felt that Kudumbashri increased women's responsibilities. Now, is this necessarily a bad thing? Which is something not for me to debate upon. So the proposed solution by Kudumbashri was to have a gender resource center for skill acquisition, and so the idea is to go from poverty, the earlier goal of poverty alleviation to gender justice and equality. And J. Devika's very important work on unpaid developmental labor in Kudumbashree hints that it heavily hinges on women's altruism and unpaid developmental labor. So most members and Kudumbashree office holders admitted that the activities are not driven by fair compensation, but by a service mentality. So the idea is that you have to voluntarily work because it is giving you some kind of financial stability in the long run for wages that may not necessarily be fair. And however, when asked about this, a CDS chairperson remarked that a larger compensation might lead to unhealthy compensation and overt politicization. And the government has already defaulted on promises of increment by rupees 500, I think twice. So the domestic chores and with respect to the domestic chores and responsibilities, household chores were mostly done by female members of the family. And many admit that they have not thought about how unfair or unequal the division of labor is. There is a tacit acceptance of this triple burden. And many feel that status quo and cultural factors have led to the same, and some preferred giving priority to male members because that has been the tradition or that has been the norm so far. And to do a comparative study, this is just based on the sample population that I interviewed. People in Kochi had lesser time for leisure, but people in Trivandrum had, the respondents in Trivandrum had more time for leisure. One even told me that they were learning a new art form. Then in Kochi, there were more earnings via remunerative work, which makes sense because it is a financial capital, and there are a lot of enterprises where you can get work. However, in Thiruvananthapuram, it reported less earnings via remunerative work. In Kochi, more male share in domestic chores was observed comparatively. And however, in Thiruvananthapuram, there was less, not female, but male share in domestic chores. So this is a quote in Sylvia Chand's article about the same. So the onus on women to cope is increasing, and it actually leads to in order to ensure household survival, the danger is that women will have to carry on assuming responsibilities with severe cost to their personal health and well-being. So more studies are required as to how are women responding to this in the long run and in the medium and long term. Now, the limitations of the study were obviously due to social pressures and preconceived notions. Both the observer and the participant may be limited by the availability of, may be limited by potential bias. And there were also convenience. So due to convenience-based snowball sampling, there might be risks of overrepresentation due to homophily and favors socially connected individuals. And also it lacks randomness. So there might be certain attributes that are common to the population that has been sampled. And so to conclude, a more inclusive model of development that actively engages men and redistributes responsibilities within households and communities is essential for realizing the program's transformative potential. And this is a word cloud of what I found. And that was my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you, Meenu. The presentation was, well structured and ordered, but I would like to make some comments. The first one that, starting from the first point, when you are saying about, Kudumbashree, how the Kudumbashree is an offshoot of the people planning campaign. There, you have not mentioned the differentiation between what people planning campaign has brought about as a self-help group, and Kudumbashree has brought about the neighborhood group. So, but there is a huge transitional differences both in ideology and in operation between a self-help group and a neighborhood group. Self-help group mostly coming from the World Bank model, and Kudumbasri, how it is a community-driven model, which has also been there because you mentioned about Alapi, and there is something that is started right from the community-driven model that is coming from the Kerala's social understanding. So you have to bring in the difference between a self-help group and a neighborhood group, which is the foundational stone of Kudumbasri and how they are different. You can get that from Isaac's book, Democratizing Governance, that is very clearly mentioned about the difference between a self-help group and a neighborhood group, which is in the Kudumbasri model. Because how, the whole question of micro-level planning, then the whole issue of, the local economic development model, which is a demand-driven model of Kudumbasri that is coming through the neighborhood group is important. So that makes the neighborhood group and the group different. So that you have to bring in, at least, like that you have to recognize it. Second one, that Kudumbasri, when you're saying about Kudumbasri is the state poverty eradication mission. That you're missing, because, like when you're saying about it, it is a state poverty, it is a state poverty eradication mission, and how in the mission paper of Kudumbasri, poverty is defined. So there is a way in which the poverty is defined. That means the denial of all human rights becomes poverty. So looking from that perspective, how Kudumbasri is trying to understand poverty. So that again is missing, it is because how the poverty has been defined in a right-based discourse of development, and how Kudumbasri as a state poverty eradication mission is defining poverty. So that is the second point. And third part, like when you're saying in the Kudumbasri, then you're saying about, different interventions. But the Kudumbasri intervention is basically categorized into three. That is the three leaves of Kudumbasri as the symbol of that. One is a social empowerment, one is an economic empowerment, and third is the gender empowerment. So the program that you mentioned is actually coming under these three categories. So you need to look at that from that perspective. What is the program? For example, when you're looking at Ashraya is coming under social empowerment. And when you're looking at the gender self-learning program, it is coming under the gender empowerment. When you're looking at the micro enterprises, it's coming under the economic empowerment. Or when you're looking at, JLG, joint liability groups, the farming groups, it is coming under the economic empowerment. So you have to look at and categorize what are the programs coming under which section, and then rather than, like listing all together, because it's all coming under different umbrellas with a different kind of vision and mission in that. And then the other one, then you're bringing, when you're bringing about, this whole question that, the third one, when you're bringing in a Bourdieuian understanding of capital, where you're bringing the symbolic capital, cultural capital, economic capital, right? But then when you are bringing in the capital, when you are bringing in a Bourdieuian understanding to understand the capital, it is equally important Bourdieuian understanding to bring in, the habitus and then the field, So habitus as a disposition of various kinds of practices, like social practices, cultural practices, economic practices, political practices. So how, Bourdieu is trying to understand the habitus as different form of practices, and how the gendered practices is, like because of the Kudumbasri, then you are bringing about this whole question of triple burden, then you can very well bring in that, that how using an understanding of habitus, how the practices are becoming gendered practices, and how is it, what is the way in which this gendered practices are hegemonized through the usual norms of, the gender thing, so that you can use it, so that which you can definitely use. And the other one which, like I felt is that when you bringing about all those things, you have somewhere missed about, the way in which the Kudumbasri is also bringing in how the transition from an individual to a citizen. So the individual to a gendered citizenship, which is very important, whether that is because from even when the feminist movement are saying about the transcending the public-private divide about the spaces, but then how the women are always been constituted as individuals, which has been defined by the social relationships, like a mother, sister, daughter, so one is his mother, so one is sister. So I'm defined through my social relationships. When I'm becoming a citizenship, of my engagement with the public spaces, how I'm engaging with the state is making the change in the identity. So here, when the Kudumbasri is coming out to, the Kudumbasri women are coming out to the public spaces, is there any transition from being an individual to citizenship? And so what is the violence? Because you're looking at it from a different perspective. You're saying that transition is giving them the triple burden, and the triple burden is a violence. So the transition from an individual to a citizen, is it a violent to the women because of the triple burden, and how is it? that whether, like that, how the women are looking at that, So you can really look that from understanding of a structure, power and agency. There is a structure of Kudumbashree, and what are the powers, the economic power, social power, political power, cultural power, what are the power the women are exercising using their agency to question the structure, and what are the ways in which they are negotiating. They are confronting, and they are also succumbing. So where they are succumbing, where they are confronting, where they are negotiating, and what are the ways in which they are navigating, through which they are navigating the power to move through the different spaces using their agency. Because your study itself says that, okay, now the women are saying about they're getting a space in the home, they are getting a space in the decision making at the children, education of the children, healthcare of the children, buying the groceries. So there are spaces, so where they are navigating, where they are confronting, whether they are negotiating. So that kind of, changes from an individual to a citizen. Whether that change is a violent one, that also you can say that will be an interesting thing to speak about it. And the last one that you're saying about, when in the understanding of Valby's, when you are bringing that notion, you're also bringing the time, and also you are bringing about the comparative perspective. So when you're looking at the time perspective, you can also look at how the feminization of time poverty is happening. Because that is very important when you're looking at the feminization of poverty, because Kudumbashree, since it is a state poverty eradication mission, and now there is a feminization of time poverty. Time poverty is happening. Why? Because of this triple burden. And there you can have a time ratio analysis between male and female, when you have, and how the Kudumbashree work is giving them a time poverty. That also will be giving you some kind of conclusion into analysis. These are certain kind of, and then the last one that I'm saying about, when you're saying about developmental unpaid labor, then you are, I don't know whether you have completed your study, but since you are using that as one of the principal understanding, or a philosophical or a theoretical understanding to look at that, then are you coming with a predetermined analytical tool? Okay, then now the women are having developmental unpaid labor, so then that is something that you are coming, then that is a little faulty, because you have to see the field, and then from the responses, and then use the theoretical things to critically look at that, not with going with a pre-understanding of a theoretical basis and looking at that. Yeah, that are some of the kind of my comments. Yeah, Meenu.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
Is
you.
there any questions on that, Meenu?
Yes, ma'am. So regarding unpaid
Can you
development.
be a little louder? I'm not able to hear you.
Sure, sure. So regarding unpaid developmental labor, when we talk about, so there was kind of opposing views, because some people wanted increased compensation, but then the office bearers essentially suggested that larger compensation might lead to, and as it said, unhealthy compensation and overt politicization, which is something that they found is competition. Sorry, I meant unhealthy competition and overt politicization. So it was something that they saw as undesirable. And so, how do I look at this from a different framework?
You're not audible. I don't know. Somehow, can you speak? Take the mic to your mouthpiece and speak, because when you are presenting, it was very clear, but now it is not. Yeah,
Yes,
little louder. Yeah.
my internet is not great, perhaps that's why. So when I talk about unpaid developmental labor, so there were certain members who wanted increased compensation, but then people who were essentially office bearers said that this would lead to unhealthy competition and overt politicization, which they termed as undesirable. And they have already mentioned that government has defaulted on payments. And so I wanted to know what kind of.
I got the point. I got the point now.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, like that you cannot say as an unpaid development labor, because I've read Devika's paper where you're saying about, like that for the development, when you're saying about a development interventions, then you are saying that you are engaging women for that, and women are not paid for that, and this is an unpaid development labor. That is something, like that. For example, any kind of development interventions, you are actually engaging with women, and they are not being paid for, and so you are actually extracting the labor of the women, and there is an unpaid development labor. But then what the thing that you were saying about is actually looking at the politicization. That is again one thing that I forgot to mention, because in my study also saying that there is a high level of politicization, especially when it is coming to the CDS election, not at the energy level, not at the ADS level, but at the CDS level, because like it is also why it is happening, because Now the CDS is also the places where you are having a large number of financial power there, because Kudumbasri is now the NULM, NRLM, then many kind of, becomes the state chapter. So Kudumbasri also having, the CDS is also getting a lot of financial powers. The moment they started understanding that the financial power is there, there is a lot of politicization, both from the LDF and the UDF. There's a politicization, the Kudumbasri thing is happening, and the CDS election is just like any other party election. So how that, like politicization is happening, that is very important. But then that is not what you are trying to say about it, because it's going in a different tangent altogether.
Yes.
So then the whole question is not about unpaid development labor. It is about it is extraction, of the volunteerism of this Kudumbasri people, and then
Yes.
domestic costs and responsibilities is there. So then that is the only thing, but towards when you are finalizing your analysis, you can bring that theoretical propositions, but not as a, what I'm suggesting is that not as a initial one to understand it. Once look at that, how the field is saying, and from that you can use a theoretical premise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But definitely bring this, structure, power, and agency. Will be very good. And also, since you're bringing Burdo into it, bring the habitus, how the habitus is important and how the habitus is becoming a gendered habitus,
Okay.
and also change that initial one of SG energy, because that will give you an understanding.
Ma'am, regarding that, I had also like differentiated between SHGs and NHGs.
Yeah, because I could not see that. You're saying about, like NHGs, but I could not see about SHGs. Difference between SHGs and NHGs. Because every time I heard about so many things, still saying, okay, Kudumbasri is coming from the World Bank model, which is quite different actually. Many of the writings are saying about, SHG model is actually taken by the World Bank. So it is actually the people planning campaign is an SHG model, but Kudumbasri is an NHG model. So there is a transitional shift from the people planning campaign to Kudumbasri, even though Kudumbasri is an offshoot of a people planning campaign.
Okay. Sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Meenuji. That was a great and extensive presentation. Moving on with the last presenter for today, Sonamji.
Yes. I'm audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So my topic is sustainability of water and sanitation services in Mumbai's informal settlements. Next slide. So this will be the overview from introduction to references I will be talking. Yeah. Next slide. So first, for understanding informal settlement, we need means urbanization takes important role where means for the question of bread, people come from rural background to urban areas, and they start living in mostly it is seen that from certain class and caste people do certain kind of work which is indirectly linked to informal work, and I will be in between adding few narratives which are found in Dalit literature, such as अंग्रेज आया मशीन लाया मिल बनाया झोपड़पट्टी चमार बनकर लोहर मेहतर सब बनाया झोपड़पट्टी सारी दुनिया को ऊंचा उठा के मजदूर रह लिया झोपड़पट्टी मीन्स the slums in one sentence if I have to summarize it is like in every MIDC or any other industry is there. Beside that there you can find slums or informal settlements because of affordability of houses and yeah. So this is in quest of bread people come to reside in slums, but they face challenges with respect to water and proper sanitation facilities. So in the SDG is talking about achieving goal 6, which is ensure that everyone has equal access to clean water and sanitation, and also it is a fundamental human right, but it is has been seen that people means based on the lived experience of my and whatever narratives I heard, people felt that we can't able to offer someone water or washroom. It is means they face that kind of challenge. So we can see the difference between this. No, not next slide. No, previous slide only. So according to census 2011, it is mentioned 42% of Mumbai population resides in slums, and in with respect to Mumbai's total land area, it is 10%. And recently, time of India, it has been published that less than 8% land is covered under slum area. So various initiatives have been taken to address uh, and court judgments have been given to improving slum living condition and ensuring equitable access for all. Next slide. But it is seen that in means with respect to water accessibility, there is inequality in slum versus non-slum area, where if WHO, World Health Organization, recommends that 55 to 100 LP liter per capita LPCD water should be there for per person, but in actuality, 45 liters or lesser than 45 liter per person water is there. And for the Swachh Bharat Mission says there should be 35 males and 25 females per seat. In community toilet there should be the um, balance with electricity and sewerage connection. But in reality, if we see based on the literature review, there has been the difference seen. And till now there was sorry based on the Praja Foundation 2021 report, it's has been seen that this inequality with respect to water and sanitation service provided in Mumbai, provided by Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai, there has been indifference compare. Yeah. So sorry. One of the quote I wanted to highlight, which is written by Valmiki in 2006, that victims of caste system live in this way. Why they seem strange to you means, if we see these pictures of drainage and community toilets, so why this the condition is like this. And also there is one line: since generation we have been struggling to get a sip of water. So yeah, can you yeah. So no, previous slide only. So the question is with respect to water and sanitation, it's how it is available. The difference can be seen with respect to availability. It is available or not. If it is available, but who are those who are able to access it? And with respect to affordability, how they afford these basic services. Next slide. So based on the literature review, it has been seen that that per toilet seat, the 190 users in 18 wards, or yeah. And the open drainage system is there. Most of the times the community toilets are not linked to sewerage pipes. There 10%, the people living in informal settlements, their 10% expenses are consume or income invested in water and to access water and sanitation services. And with respect to health, there are many waterborne diseases, as there is no private toilet, so many contamination of and communicable diseases happens. With respect to gender, it has been seen the inequality to who is responsible for bringing the water, and how based on sanitation practices, how females and males are diverse with respect to their experiences. Till now, the Millennium Development Goals of mention water by 2005 and made progress in sanitation. Means with respect compared to earlier situation, there it seems on the document there is achievement, but if we are going to say means the SDG goal 6 aims that in 2030 it will be universal access, um, but in reality, if I am speaking about Mumbai slums specifically, then this is means question. If we see the contrast or the gaps between the aim and the reality. Next slide. Yeah. So there is a theoretical framework which is a hydrosocial cycle. Means hydro means water, and how society is linked to means the problems related to water, how it is interlinked, and it is internal part of that society. Um, Having access to water and sanitation services, if they are not getting this basic rights, um, then it is a indication of a poverty and indignity, because people thinks we are not that much educated to ask or get or fight for our rights. So it has been seen, if economically also they are doing comparatively well, but because of the non availability of water and sanitation services, they are facing many challenges, and which do affect their right to life. And this violation, this is indirectly and directly violation of human rights. So it has been seen there is in Mumbai, uh, as per my observation and whatever I have read, the Dalit movement have been did showed assertiveness to demand for their basic rights, and how geography matters. Means in non-slum area also, this kind of legal and illegal land is there or buildings are there, but how slum pockets or informal settlements are not able to get access, or comparatively there is access, but with respect to needs, the accessibility is lesser. uh, s- uh, and with respect to sanitation also, if Swachh Bharat mission is talking about building toilets, but in slums we can not see uh, per house one home one toilet program is going that, or access people are able to get the access to the toilets, um, as I mentioned in the literature review. Can we move to the slides? Next slide. Yeah. So I want to understand based on the literature, uh, first to understand the condition of water and sanitation in informal settlements of Mumbai, where I am specifically looking in N ward, and my other objective is to understand how SDG 6 is going to be achieved till 2030 according to the residents, government officers, and the CSO who are working in this sector as well as in this geographical area. Next slide. So this majorly these are the research question with respect to accessibility, affordability, gender and socio-economic factors, how it intersect these services, and according to residents, government officer, and CSO, uh, how they what challenges they are facing to achieve SDG 6. Next slide. Yeah, so for that, I will be conducting the survey and community mapping. In community mapping, survey is to understand and have the quantitative information, because for policy making level, it will be helpful if it will be that quality of quantitative data. And the community mapping will help the study as well as community to raise awareness what are the SDGs, and they should discuss about what are their challenges or their experiences with respect to water and sanitation. And qualitative method, I will be using interview guide with government officers and CSOs. My sample size is 30 households in N-ward with of different societies, and this will be done in next few weeks. And yeah, next slide. Yeah, that's it. These are the references, and yeah, thank you. It's sorry, it was not in flow.
Yeah, Sonam, first of all, you are when you are looking in the beginning, the whole question about water sources, you can say about how the urban sprawl, because you have to bring in that, because it's an urbanization program. So how the urban sprawl is affecting the water services. So you can say there are many studies that says about how urbanization and the urban sprawl is impacting the water services. So you can begin with that, and there are plenty of studies. So you can use the review of literature to get from that, and then saying about, the whole question of gentrification, how the urbanization is bringing in the gentrification, and then the question of the slums that is coming up. And there you are bringing in the triple A's, like availability, affordability, and accessibility of water resources. You are bringing that, and how the whole question of slums as a systemic interventions and the systemic matter that you have to bring in. And then then you are bringing about the hydrosocial framework, right? When you're bringing about the hydrosocial framework, Sonam, the most important thing, theoretical thing that you have to bring about the social scarcity. How, because you are bringing about, the whole question about the geography, you are bringing about the disparity, but how the geography and the disparity and the multiple forms of inequalities, like economic inequality, gender inequality, social inequality, how it is bringing the social scarcity of water. So scarcity is actually not being produced by the scarcity of the resources, but the social scarcity. Like we're saying about, when you're looking at that, see, there will be a flat system, and then there will be a slum, which will be near, very adjacent. But the flat will be getting 24/7 water. But then the slums are getting, like water once in a week or twice in a week. So there is a spatial difference. This is not a spatial difference, but then that is bringing about the social differences of class, caste, and ethnicity. So social scarcity of water is something through the hydrosocial framework that you have to bring in. And then there you can bring in the social scarcity of water, gender scarcity of water, and resource scarcity of water. So you can use one of the things which you are misusing, though it is coming in your objectives, you say intersectional framework. Intersectional framework, you are not using it, because when you are looking at the slum, all people are not getting the water and the sanitation accessibility through a same thing. So that you need, and also you please send me your research questions and objectives, because you are asking the questions like what is the condition of water. We are not looking at the quality of water, we are looking at the availability of the services of water. So that all things needs to be changed. So Sonam, can you please send me your objectives and whatever you written, so that I can make some corrections and send it back to you.
Sure, ma'am. I will share with you. Yes,
Yeah?
ma'am.
Please
Yes.
send it to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you to all the participants for such extensive and beautifully made presentations. Coming to the end, ma'am, I would now request you to conclude with your concluding remarks.
Yeah, so it has been a pleasant journey, happy journey, learning journey. Very good journey, with because I found the participants very inquisitive, very energetic, and really keen to learn more, because most of the sessions that we are having were very participative sections, coming out with very interesting questions, and all the resource persons whom I know personally called me back and said that okay, they really enjoyed the questions, especially more than the session. They really enjoyed the questions. That is actually kudos to you, because the questions were coming from you, and it was that made the sessions very engaging, participative, and dialogic. And so we would expect and hope, IMPRI and myself, expect and hope that the same kind of enthusiasm, participation, and commitment and sincerity should come in your paper, because we could only receive, very few papers and then the extended abstracts and very little presentation. So IMPRI need to come out with some kind of mechanisms how to engage them with, their because I think that only 5 or 6 presentations were there. And what about the other students? And we would like, and those students who made the presentations actually done a very commendable work. They have really gone through the work. They have come out with a very good review of literature, come out with a theoretical understanding, come out with a conceptual mapping, come out with very interesting questions, critical, engaging questions, theoretical questions, and it is what IMPRI is expecting actually to be, giving to the body of knowledge that is existing in this urban policy and local governance. And I'm sure your work is going to be much read with other peer groups who are want to know about it, because it's giving a very interesting perspectives and analysis. So all the best, and those students who could not present, please make it a point. And then those students who have done the presentations, congratulations, you have done a very good work. And thank you, IMPRI, for making this happen. For the young researchers and young academicians and young practitioners working in the area of urban policy and local governance, to come out with very interesting, innovative insights into this, and to document their observations in multiple formats. Thank you, IMPRI. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Moving on forward with the formal vote of thanks, as we come to the end of day 12 of UPLGYF, Urban Policy and Local Governance Youth Fellowship, an online national autumn and winter school program, a 4-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program. I, Avi Sharma, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI New Delhi. We are grateful to our chair and experts for day 12 session, Ms. Manjula Bharathy ji, Mr. Tikender Singh Panwar ji, for taking out their valuable time allowing us to learn from this online certificate program. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation and all through the journey of this session. We look forward to welcoming the research essay draft submission from you all on December 22 for this certification course. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on various podcasts, reading our publications. We hope you continue to join us in the future of IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you all a very good day. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.